Yeah. We're good? We're live?
Cool.
Good morning. It's ENERGISED YOU Q&A with Ray and Shane, number 11. I've run out of figures. So we've got a really good one today. We're talking about how to strengthen and improve your balance. So very interesting. It's a good topic. I think it's very common. I think it's also very applicable from everyone down from being like a parent with a child up to an elderly person and everyone in between.
Yeah.
You know, it's an important part of life, balance, you know what I mean? It's something I actually, to be really honest, struggled with as a child. I used to trip over my feet all the time. So, Ray, what's your 2 cents?
Well, absolutely. From the Oriental perspective, and if you look at any martial artists, the way they move, they're always moving sort of like low in the body. And in Oriental medicine, the area of the belly, we call this the Sea of Chi.
Sea of Chi.
It's the centre.
Yeah.
If you think of the traditional Japanese suicide of seppuku, which is to slice across, and it means to cut across the sea.
Yeah.
So it is actually letting out the life force from
It's
this
also
area.
how a sumo wrestler stands.
Well, absolutely. So you'll see any sort
That's a classic example of
balance. Like so. So a lot of the training I've done in my early days in learning martial arts, as well as for my shiatsu work, because it's a lot to do with belly, is being grounded.
Right.
So, and that's what it is. And
Yep.
being grounded is not just a physical sense, but it's also a mental sense of well-being. So when we're all scatty and up here, well, that's exactly it. We're floating everywhere. We want to ground ourselves. So you can do that physical as well.
Sure.
So we were talking before, like, so Shane used to be a professional MMA fighter. And so to take a typical fighting stance,
Yeah.
we're not going to be straight
No,
upright.
it's legs bent, core engaged, glutes activated, abs on. So anyway, I think probably where it's really always really interesting to have myself and Ray give 2 different looks at something is I'm probably going to talk a little bit more about how you can do it in the gym, do it with your training and stuff like that. And Ray will probably go a little bit more into the anatomical, skeletal, shiatsu sort of thing, if that's all right. So anyway, one of the tests I quite often do with older clients is their balance. You know what I mean? I find, what they're like from leg to leg. It's very common, as you know, Ray, for someone with a bad back to have one leg longer than the other, which then affects their balance, which also is generally from a lack of mobility, lack of flexibility, lack of core strength. There's a bunch of different factors, but what I want to give you is a couple of solutions that I provide with my clients and a couple of things I've actually implicated myself. I had a terrible balance as a child, terrible. I was one that tripped over their feet all the time. I was probably part of my ADD. I'd probably try to get somewhere quicker than my feet would take me. But one of the first things that I personally got into was martial arts, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like learning, I started off with Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and then I started training some kickboxing with our coach, Vincent. And just with Jiu Jitsu, one of the objectives was learning how to do a takedown, you know what I mean? And also in the guard, you talk about posture, like without going too far down, we're not doing a show about BJJ today, but for example, when you're wrestling, you want to be here, you know what I mean? Like here, and if you actually have a look at this stance, it's a really good balance. Like I remember Vincent used to do a test with us, and we'd be practicing our takedowns and stuff like that. And Ray, maybe you can stand up for a sec. And what he used to do, we'd get into the stance, and he would push like this. And if you couldn't hold that position, one more time here. So you'd be in your stance for your wrestling shot for jiu-jitsu, and you push like that, and see Ray's like in a movable. And if you moved, your stance wasn't, wasn't good enough. Like you weren't grounded, your abs weren't activated, your lower back muscles weren't on, your glutes weren't activated, which is the main driver for a shot, biggest muscle in the group. So for me, one of the first things that really improved my balance was my martial arts, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and then
stuff.
Cool. And then as I probably did Brazilian Jiu Jitsu for 3 to 4 years, and then I transferred into learning a bit of the striking stuff. And with that, it's all balance. You know what I mean? If you ever look at a boxer like a Floyd Mayweather or a Oscar De La Hoya or the Manny Pacquiao, their balance, they spend hours on footwork every week, as we did. You know what I mean? Like Vincent was really big on footwork, you know what I mean? Like we had some guys in our gym that were just natural strikers, like Wade and Juan, and you saw these guys' footwork, it was crazy. The way they used to move around, especially I would say the boxers, you know what I mean? And MMA took a lot from boxing, but the boxers, how their movement was and the balance they needed to really deliver those blows was a skill, you know what I mean? It was a skill, and so that's probably a little bit on how I really improved my balance, was just learning the jiu-jitsu takedowns and then learning kickboxing. Like the balance you need to throw around kick on a Thai pad, it's a skill, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it also works core strength, it works coordination, mobility, you know what I mean? There's a whole bunch of different factors that really, and not that everyone needs to go out and start Brazilian Jiu Jitsu or kickboxing, but it's one thing that, we both did, you know what I mean? And you'd obviously done a lot of training before you came and started training at our gym. But there were two things for myself that really taught me a lot. Now, as I've gotten older, and I still love training my kickboxing and my jiu-jitsu, I've transitioned from being more of an athlete, competitor, student into a coach. Like I've been a PT for 11 years, and it's really common. And you find it a lot in 50 plus. Ray, I know you deal with that tape regular demographic as well. They start to lose their balance, you know what I mean? Now, some really good things. One is looking at your core strength. That's really important.
These muscles,
abs. So your core, and just FYI, your core is not your abs. There's actually every single muscle that's attached to your hip is your core muscle. So you've got your psoas, you've got your erectus abdominis, you've got your obliques, you've got your erectus spinae, you've got the bottom of your lats, you've got, there's a lot of muscles.
Don't forget these.
You've got your glutes,
muscle mass, glutes, upper and lower body.
That's it, hamstrings, hip flexors, your core is not the abs. Everyone thinks the core is the abs.
Yeah.
The abs are an important part of the core, but they're not the core. The core muscle is there's a lot of different muscles. So anyway, then we're going to look at Pilates. You're going to look at yoga. All right, you're going to look at doing, like your deadlift. You know what I mean? Like your traditional deadlift will teach you good balance because you need to have good grounding into the ground. Squats, like learning how to squat properly. Like one of my tests I do with every new client, I'm like, do a squat for me. And what happens is most people do their squat and they come forward like that. Most people do, maybe not that, that's a bit extreme. But from doing that test, I can look at the lack of tightness and a very common thing we're seeing, and especially a little bit older, everyone is tight psoases and hip flexors, right? I'm sure you treat this all the time. The reason for this, sitting down too much, driving, on their iPads, computers, tablets, phones, laptops, all that sort of thing. So a really good reason to start looking at doing, my background was the martial arts, but I'm doing, like, I do a little bit of yoga myself, and I have to work a lot on stretching, because my core is quite strong. I do still train in, my martial arts, but one of my challenges is mobility. So for balance for me, I need to stretch the front of my body. It's really important,
Yeah. I think it's like we spoke about last week as well. You look at mobility, stability, and strengthening. And it's getting your body balanced. Because what I look at in people is their alignment, what we call horizontal planes, how your head sits on your neck, how your shoulder levels, your scapular levels, your ribs, your pelvis levels, your twists and your turns, and your leg lengths. So if you're out of balance and the muscles on one side of the body are tight, and they're pulling the other side, you're always going to have difficulty with your own balance.
And that's it, 100%. And then what Ray was talking, we were sort of talking about before, is so many people are tight here because they're like this. You know what I mean? It's so common. Like I am, but not as bad as I've worked on it over the years. I'm nowhere near like what I once was about 3 or 4 years ago because I've had to consistently work on it every day. And I'm not a naturally flexible person, but like I said, you've got your martial arts, your wrestling, your Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, your kickboxing, you've got, Pilates and yoga for people that are not necessarily into that. They're all great things that are going to mobilize, strengthen your core, and stabilize. You know what I mean? And they're the 3 sort of points. So, as I said, that's probably from my end, but I'm going to pass it on to Ray. He can definitely go a lot more in depth with the shiatsu and anatomical.
Well, we're going to really look at, I want to provide you with something that you can do at home. We encourage you to get out there and do, fully active sports. Shane and I both love the MMA. and the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Come along and do those classes, because particularly Jiu Jitsu is great for your balance.
Yeah.
However, what can you do at home? So let's just do a little exercise right now. If you're sitting down, sit upright, sit straight, and what I want you to do is tense your abdominal muscles. So as you tense your abdomen, hold them all squeezed, and you'll find that in the centre there somewhere, there's a part that you can't tense. So just there'll be usually like a 50% piece. There'll be a part that you're squeezing, and that doesn't seem to tense. So for me, it's just below the navel. Yeah. Other people might be higher, and this will give you an idea of where your centre is. That part you can't tense at the moment. That's where your centre of gravity is. So really, your centre of gravity wants to be below the navel, preferably, because that's that whole thing of sinking down, being in these.
It's sort of that's where my pubic bone on my navel.
Yeah, and that's where it should be. So as a start, what we want to do, and this is an exercise I have to teach a lot of people. This is in terms of learning to walk.
The walking out. Yeah. I remember this one years ago.
and this is, I hope we're still on the screen. I'll just see if I can get further back. So when we learn to walk, we're actually learning to walk from crawling, and think of that, children crawling, and please don't get your kids to walk too soon.
Yep.
Like, yo, get up. Crawling is a fundamental phase, so I actually do crawling exercise with people to actually re-establish that core balance. But here for standing, if we're going to walk in a line, we're having this discussion before, I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and in those days, young ladies went off to deportment school. When they learned
I found out about this today, I was amazed.
Where they actually learned to walk with a book placed on their head for their deportment and balance. So it's a great exercise to be doing things like this, but the standard walk to relearn to walk and get in your balance is you don't have your knees locked. So knees slightly flexed there, and when we place a foot out, you go heel, side of foot, toe.
Jesus, deep.
So it's heel, side of foot, toe. And then heel, side of foot, toe. Heel, side of foot, toe. And so you actually create this as a meditative walk. So I would be walking on, and it's an exercise, so you don't need to be necessarily doing it in the street, but it's heel, side of foot, toe, heel, side of foot, toe. And so this creates strengthening and balancing. It's great for the arches of the foot, because a lot of the times we're locking in the knees and all this is falling down. So this actually strengthens the feet and the muscles attaching the foot to the leg. So it's a great exercise. But
what did they teach us in deportment school? This
throw this in, we'll see if I embarrass myself or not. But I'm here in my original.
Maybe it's a little bit more weight. Try this one.
A bit more weight, geez.
I think we
I have to pull the. So here we've got this sort of deportment here, and from this lift, roll and tuck posture, there's a link there, and I'm just going to move. And so the whole idea here is this balance is heel, outside of foot, ball of the foot. And so when we're moving in this way, we've really got to create the balance to do this sort of thing. Who did that? Now, use it as a meditative walk. When I'm out walking in the morning, I will every now and again consciously think about it. I'm just walking and I'm doing this heel, side, foot, toe. It really gets you in balance all the time. So you're moving from your belly, what we call the hara in Oriental medicine. So any movement, if you see martial artists, Aikido, Judo, etc., a lot of the movement is like this. It's almost like skiing. So whereas in boxing we're on our toes, but we're still down in this sort of low stance. You don't box like this. You've got to get down. So whatever you're going to do, think consciously of lowering yourself into your belly, and that's a great form of exercise. You got anything else you want to add to that, Shane?
No, absolutely not. Do you want to put that back down? Cool. No.
So they're just a couple of exercises. Do lots of stuff. Crawling on the floor is great for your overall balance. Just things that get you feeling stable. And remember, when you think more into that belly and exercise in the belly, your mind is going to be more grounded as well.
Sure.
All right.
Cool. All right, we'll wrap it up at that. That's great. I learned a lot today, which is good. But we'll wrap it up at that. So that's episode number 11. Leave it at that, guys. We obviously, guys, we struggle to get a few questions, you know.
Yes,
and so if there's anything that, you know, like, guys, this is not a sales pitch. If any of you guys got any genuine questions or stuff you want answered between myself and Ray, just PM us. You know, we can anonymously, you know, put it out there and send you a link. But besides that,
see you next week.
have a great week.
Enjoy.